you all have a copy of the agenda in your packet. Is there any discussion before we approve it? Okay, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda. Motion so made. Seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, who made the motion, please, Brian?
That was Member Gorski and then seconded by Member Trotter.
Thank you.
Yeah. My abbreviated attempt at democracy. And before we get to the presentations, I just want to give a little bit of information for TBD. I've got a meeting the first week in September with the Chief of Operations of Intra-City Transit from Olympia. And we're not getting into any agreement. It's an initial discussion, part of it based on what the mayor presented us earlier and some of our own discussions. But you know, the idea being, we stopped an internal sales tax that generated $482,000 a year. So what I want to ask you is how many empty buses will you sell me for $482,000? Don't talk to me about ridership or fees. That's a going-in position. And eventually, if we found something that they offered was something that we thought the public would be interested in, then it would become a ballot measure. The public would have to decide to reinstate that sales tax. I wouldn't see any activity for inter and intra transit happening before 16, but this is the first step. And once I get some feedback from that meeting in September, what I'll do is I'll type something up and I'll have Aaron send out to everybody so you know where we stand on it, and we can have further discussions. With that, okay, we have a traffic analysis and background, current projected. I think you ladies are here to do that for us.
Yes.
I'm excited. Well, thank you for coming. Yeah, if I can ask you to introduce yourselves.
Yes, we will. So, it's Tamara Knapp with Great Osborne. This is Jerry Reinhardt. And she's with her own shop. So, just to give you a little background, because some of you don't know me, but with Great Osborne, I've been providing engineering services to the city of DuPont since 1990. So, over almost 25 years. So I've seen the city grow from a population of 500 to what it is today. And about, I think 5 years ago, Dominic took the lead, and I kind of sat back, and I'm used for historical reference and also when we have large issues that we need. So that's my background, and I'll let Jerry tell you a little bit about how she gets into DuPont.
Well, I've probably been doing work in DuPont since the mid-90s, kind of when the Intel proposal came in, and worked with Tamara, sub-consultant, worked with her for many years, so kind of got involved in it at that time, and since then have been reviewing all of the development projects that come into the pipeline, into the city, and then also just kind of on-call work, helping staff with any kind of traffic-related issues that they feel they aren't comfortable in handling and need a little bit more expertise on that and/or recommendation.
So the three things we're hit the broad subjects are, I'm going to talk about traffic in DuPont history-wise. Jerry's going to cover current conditions, and then we can open up for if you have questions, and then we're going to kind of end up with moving forward, with some of the issues and possibly this kind of move forward. So with that, I'm going to just start off with something that you guys are working on right now, which is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plans that were written in 1985 and 1995 and 2001 were all guiding documents for a lot of things, but also with traffic. And those, each of those reports has land use in it. And from the land use that was in there, assumptions were made based on traffic projections. It doesn't mean that's what your traffic's going to be, but based on the land use, that's how projections are made. And the comp plans say this is what we project, in 2020 and that build out. And those numbers were used to kind of, as a guideline to decide where your networks are going to be, and then where you may need signals in the future. And so those are your guiding documents. So once you have those, then your development really occurs. And so then we start talking about traffic impact analysis. And will hear me referring to TIA as an abbreviation. So the city of DuPont has a standard on traffic impact analysis. So when a development comes, whether it's a commercial lot or whether it's a plat, the developer is required to do a traffic impact analysis if development generates more than 250 trips a day or 25 peak trips. And they do the analysis, and they do their generation, and they distribute it, and then they analyze key intersections. And based on that analysis, then it's determined whether their development triggers mitigation. And the city's adopted a level service of D, and if it hits below D, then we talk about mitigation. Jerry is key in that part, as you mentioned before. She works with us in looking at what mitigation measures may be. And mitigations can range from like putting in a right-hand turn lane, putting in a left-hand turn lane. Do we need a signal? Do we need to expand the left turn lanes that need to be longer? Do we need to have 2 left turn lanes? Do we need to revise the timing of the signal or the phasing? So those are all possible mitigation measures that we look at. So one of the advantages the city of DuPont has had that most cities don't have is that you had one developer in town for about 20 years in Costa Rica. And when they came forward for their developments, they built in capacity because it was easy, from an economic standpoint, it was better to build center drive at 4 lanes than to build it 1 lane in each direction as class came on, eventually add the other lanes. And they also put in some signals. So you were dealing with one developer who would put in more infrastructure than was needed on the assumption that he would need in the future. He knew that because of the comprehensive plan and projections. The disadvantage now is that you no longer have one developer in town. They've sold their property, and we've always done mitigation through SEPA. So we say, okay, the last person in, we do the signal. So if you had a property, and it happened earlier this year, or last July, Rio's Garage came in, and they triggered a signal international place. But they also, based on the analysis, there were other things on DuPont Stoughton Road, and it becomes so very burdensome. And the council gave them a variance on not doing the other mitigations because of had to do with integrity gates and other issues. But so that's one of the challenges we have now. We used to do it by SEPA, and the SEPA, the best way, because what it is the last person in pays for it, and you eventually get smaller lots. That's a lot of money for one person or one development to take care of. So the next thing I'm going to cover here is there are some restrictions, and I'm going to see if I can operate this. You just point at this green room. Okay. Okay, so this is map.
But don't be offended if we turn our backs to you and look at that.
No, oh, that's okay. Okay, so there's 2 restrictions in DuPont right now. And first one I'm going to talk about is the Haskell Street closure, and it's between Barksdale and Richmond, I believe is the street. And just to give you, that is a covenant on that piece of property. And the covenant basically says that in order to remove the restriction, right now only emergency vehicles are supposed to be using that, and it's signed that way. But the way the covenant on that property reads is that 100% of the voting residents of Historic Village and also divisions 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Palisades, 100% have to vote to remove that restriction. That's what the covenant says. The reason that covenant came about was when the Palisades area, right, like where the school is and this development here and over here, when those are being built, the Historic Village was very concerned about residents using that and going down Barksdale Road. They were concerned about that was their concern. So this was in response to that action. At that time, just to give you an idea what was built, at that time, Center Drive was built. It's about right here. Construction from Palisade down to McNeil had started. And so you had Center Drive to here, and then you had Palisade Boulevard down, and you had Wilmington. That's what you had. That was basically your infrastructure. So that was in response to that. So then the next one comes, the next other restriction that we have is a truck restriction between Palisades and McNeil. So Center Drive, as you know, is a 4-lane arterial. It has been in all your comprehensive plans. It was never designated to be truck restricted. When construction started on that job, the residents that lived in this area said there were many public meetings, council meetings. They were very concerned that they would hear trucks. They never knew, one of their claims was they never knew the Center Drive would ever be extended down. And that is why the truck restriction was put in. So both of those restrictions were put in based on the public coming to the council, and those are the results. One of the questions I'm asked is, was Center Drive designed for truck traffic? And the answer is yes, it was, because it was under construction. It was under construction before the restriction went in, and it's your major arterial through your city. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry, and she's going to cover current conditions.
Okay, thanks. So, first thing that I'm going to start with is traffic volumes and what the city does each year. The city has a yearly traffic count program, and we count both daily volumes and peak hour conditions at key locations. It's usually done in late September, early October, mostly trying to get the school traffic in those counts and numbers. Daily volumes are collected at 15 locations throughout the city, and peak hour counts are conducted at 7 key intersections, most of those along Center Drive. And once we have all that data in, I kind of look through it and give the okay and send the information off to Tamara's office. And her office actually produces a map that actually is not up there, but I have it in my hands. And it's available to the public. I think staff has a copy of it at the front desk. But anyway, it just summarizes all of the data that we've collected. And we've been doing that probably since 97. Okay, so almost 20 years now we have some historical data.
And Jerry, that's our website.
Oh, it's not, okay, great, thank you. So as Tamara mentioned earlier, the city, within their street standards, have the requirements for traffic impact analysis for new developments that will generate a certain amount of traffic. And what the TIA does, she talked a little bit about it, but it reviews existing conditions, provides an estimate of the amount of traffic that the development will generate and the likely travel paths for that traffic. And then also it determines its impacts during the peak hours for both existing and future conditions with and without the project trips. As part of this process, the applicant is given the count data that the city has available for use in their analysis, so we kind of have consistent data being used all the time. If for some reason they need to analyze a location where we don't have count data, it's their responsibility and at their cost to go out and get that data as part of the process. So in order to make sure that they're analyzing, or as part of the process in analyzing for future conditions, we also require them to include what we call the pipeline trips in those future conditions, which is all of the traffic or all of the projects that have been previously approved but are as yet unbuilt, so that we can make sure that in the future, first of all, I want to see what difference there is between the future without their project versus with their project, so how their traffic's going to impact that. But it's also our way of kind of keeping an idea of what's happening here in terms of level of service and operating conditions at the intersections. So I keep a list, a little table for all of the intersections that has line by line the traffic for each development, and how many left turns, how many right turns, how many through movements they might be having at any given intersection. Currently there are about a dozen projects on that list, and they include several industrial sites up in the kind of the northerly part off of Center Drive. It also includes what I call the phase 1 of the first park trips, which is the development around the golf course, and also the Amazon trips. project is finally occupied and fully operating, the following year when we collect the next year's worth of traffic data, that project simply deleted off that pipeline trip list because now it's captured in what we call the existing volumes at that time. So for example, Amazon is now in the process of kind of gearing up, ready to come online. We're doing our counts in September. We probably still won't be seeing the true impacts of their normal operating conditions until 2015. So until that time, I'll probably be keeping those pipeline trips in the analyses. So what I'm going to talk about now is what you're seeing up on the screen. What we've gone through is kind of giving you some examples of existing volumes, the existing plus pipeline trips, and then also the volume projections at full build-out for the land uses that are in the current comp plan. So the first location is the south end of Center Drive between I-5 and Wilmington. Tamara's going to point it out. Currently, or last year's count, we had just under 17,000 trips a day at that location. When we add all the pipeline trips into it, it would increase by about 10,000 to just under 27,000 trips a day. The estimated volume at that location at full build out of the city per the most recent comp plan is just over 47,000 trips a day. So we're only about a third of the way there, and a long ways to go before that happens. The second location is to the north of that, north of McNeil Street. Much smaller volume there, mostly because what we're seeing is between the freeway and McNeil Street is the impacts of all of the residential developments in Hoffman Hill and the village area. So that volume currently is just under 6,700 vehicles a day. With the pipeline trips, we're just under 16,000, and at build out, it would be over 40,000 trips a day. Now on the far end up by DuPont Silicon Road on Center Drive, we're currently similar number as North McNeil, we're at 6,800 vehicles a day. The pipeline trips would add another 7,300 trips to just over 14,000 vehicles a day. And at build out, the estimate there is 25,000 vehicles a day. And then our final location is down on DuPont Silicon Road, north of Barksdale, before you get to the interchange. Right now we're at 11,500 a day. We're looking at about 4,100 more trips from the pipeline development, and build out volume at about 18,000 vehicles a day. So I know a big question has been the impacts from Amazon. So we'll kind of just talk about one specific project and how that falls into all of this. According to their traffic analysis, they'll be looking at about 1,450 trips a day during what they call their normal season, which is January through the end of October. During peak season, November and December, they're looking at about a 50% increase, so about 2,200 to 2,300 trips a day. Keeping that in mind, the prior proposal for that same property was about another 50% higher. So when the traffic impact analysis was done for that, it was just a general distribution center.
And that's all vehicles, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And their employment projection during the normal season is about 620 employees a day on site, and increasing to 950 a day during their peak season. During the peak season, what you'll probably see more from a street operating situation is that due to the modifications that they'll make with their shifts and running them all night, you'll probably see more of their traffic in the AM peak hour, so around 7 o'clock, but not much difference in the PM peak hour, and that's just how they're going to be running their shifts and modifying them for the peak season. So in terms of their impact within those pipeline trips at the 4 locations, down on Center Drive at the southern end, they'd be adding about 1,000 to 1,400 vehicles a day. That's their portion of the pipeline trips. Up by DuPont, Silicon Road, there it would be about just under 800 vehicles a day would be associated, of the pipeline trips, the new pipeline trips would be associated with Amazon. And then down further to the south by Barksdale on DuPont Silicon Road, they'd be about 400 of the trips. So overall, Amazon is about 10% of all of those pipeline projects, the trips associated with them. So that kind of is where we are with all the existing volumes and the trips within the pipeline. One of the big things, question marks in all of this, which is not included in the city's pipeline trips, is the impact from the new access control point or the integrity gate at JBLM, which will be at Wharf Road. Which is my understanding. I think the opening for that is about 2015, 2016. And as part of that installation, it will include a traffic signal at the Wharf Road intersection, and there will be some additional lanes constructed as part of that. A traffic study was completed for the gate by JBLM's consultant. However, all that was included in that initially was just a review of the intersection itself and nothing beyond that. The staff did meet with JBLM and concerns were raised with respect to that. There was nothing in there that said, okay, if we have 1,000 people or 1,000 vehicles coming into the gate in the morning, how many of those are really new, that jumped off I-5 early and you're no longer going to use Main Gate, versus the ones that were maybe are just using the I Street Gate or something, another gate to the north. So there was no distinction between what the difference was. So that was one of the concerns. The other thing was, of course, the what impacts would it have at DuPont Silicon Road and Center Drive, as they travel up to that gate, and then of course at Barksdale and DuPont Silicon Road. They did come back with some additional information to identify their traffic. Based on that, they were looking at, these are their numbers, adding about 690 trips during the AM peak hour at the Center Drive DuPont Silicon Road intersection, and over 900 during the PM peak hour at that intersection. Down at Barksdale and DuPont Silicon Road, they were looking at adding a little over 400 AM peak hour trips and 660 PM peak hour trips. Unfortunately, no daily traffic volumes were noted in any of that, but based on the information that they did provide, most of that traffic, what they're projecting, is staying on just the DuPont Silicon Road corridor. Very little was heading over to Center Drive. So again, that is the information that they provided for us. They did also analyze the two intersections that I mentioned, Center Drive and Barksdale at DuPont Silicon Road. The results of their analysis indicated that they would be marginally level of service D, which is the city standard. But really the big problem with that is they used up most of the remaining capacity at those intersections. So we're now finding ourselves in the situation where anything that wants to develop in the city and is going to be basically impacting that corridor, we now have a bit of a difficulty in approving those projects because of our level of service standard. And that did happen last year about this time when Northwest Logistics 2 came into for their application, and they were the first project to go through the system after we had this information from JBLM. And so I asked them to do an analysis with and without the impacts from the gate. They were fine without the trips associated with the JBLM gate, but they weren't able to meet the city's level of service standard at these two intersections once we threw in all of the integrity gate trips. As a result of that, that was brought up to staff and then to council, and in the end, we did grant a variance to go below that level of service D condition for them. Otherwise, without that, they were virtually stopped, because the improvements that are needed at these two intersections, all of you are familiar with it, is beyond kind of the capability of a single project. Going back to what Tamara explained, when it was all one big developer owned everything, there were much greater financial resources, but this is now kind of the problem that we're evolving into. And unfortunately, I have another project that just is going through the review process down at Barksdale Station, and we're encountering a similar situation. So that's, going to be happening more and more along this corridor as we move forward. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the developments, pipeline trips, Amazon, the integrity gate situation. I'm gonna kind of take a little jump sideways now and go back to truck traffic.
Let me just ask you,
Okay.
you twice now said that, these have been brought to council for approval, and I've been on council for 2.5 years now, and not once have I voted on a variance for approving the degradation below level D. I think that's happening at the hearing examiner level, not,
I actually came to council when I made the presentation.
have we voted to grade?
It was for the one project, and it was for, I always call it was for.
Northwest.
Right, and they were having to put in a signal, an international, that was part of their mitigation package, and then at Center Drive, to get it, that Center Drive, up to One Silken Road, another left-hand turn lane would need to be put in, or an extension, and to do that, the city doesn't own the right-of-way. Fort Lewis does, and owns the line.
Part of it, and the county owns part of it,
You're right.
and you have wetlands on either side of it.
Right, and so based on those things, it was, the direction council gave to staff was you stick with mitigation at International and Center Drive, and not require mitigation at DuPont. So, and I think it was like July 19th or July, I was just looking, because I thought I brought my people with me on that. That's when that occurred.
Yeah, it's not even
A
over
year
here.
ago, it was in July, like July 19th or July 23rd.
But if there's more projects coming,
Yes, there are.
I mean, DuPont Silken Road isn't getting any bigger.
No,
It isn't gonna happen. When do we just stop development?
I think that's
that's.
moving forward, kind of towards the end of our discussion of, what
I gotta tell
direction.
you, two of us already can't get out of our neighborhoods. I live in Bell Hill, and I've spent up to 10 minutes trying to get out of my neighborhood. So those numbers don't excite me.
Well,
And there is no mitigation.
I mean,
The federal government doesn't have to mitigate their impacts on the surrounding communities.
I agree.
so,
Okay.
anyway, moving sideways here on the truck traffic, just kind of again, you've heard the historical information. In terms of truck traffic on Center Drive right now, we really don't have any classification counts on that. Although we do the peak hour turning movement counts, heavy vehicles are tallied. What falls into a heavy vehicle category, though, could include one of the larger RVs or a school bus, and then anywhere from the single unit UPS trucks to five axle trucks, whatever. So right now, at pretty much all on Center Drive, we're seeing during the peak hours maybe 10 to 20 heavy vehicles in a 1 hour period, and then again, some of those are going to be buses and RVs. So not a real heavy amount of truck traffic on Center Drive. So the restriction, whether it's just self-imposing and or just the fact that most of the industrial development is off of DuPont Silicon Road, we really aren't seeing much of the truck traffic on Center Drive. In 2012, as part of a WSDOT freight and goods update, some classification counts were conducted on DuPont Silicon Road. At that time, roughly about 1,000 to 1,100 trucks per day travel along that corridor out of about 11,000 to 12,000 vehicles a day. So you're seeing about 8 to 10% of the traffic along that corridor is being truck traffic. And in terms then going back to one of the specific projects, because it's kind of been a concern, is Amazon. They are looking at, for their project, generating about 85 truck trips a day in a normal season. And that will roughly double during that 2-month period of November and December. And again, as of right now, given the current conditions, all of those will be on the DuPont Silicon Road corridor due to the restriction on Center Drive.
We'll just come to council meetings, by telephone, we won't be able to get out of our.
Again, on those, in terms of the Amazon, it'll be spread out really between 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. because of how they, load and unload their logistics. And it appears from their data that the heavy,
Complete cycle.
and then they go back and shower and,
So, what we're having is a perfect storm there around integrity page.
So, anyway, that's kind of where we are in terms of existing conditions. And so, Tamara and I thought maybe if you have some other questions, we kind of address those now and then kind of get some feedback or discuss the moving forward into the future. Now that you've been all this information thrown at you tonight. And I'm sure you can repeat all of it.
Tamara, you said that the way that we do it is the last in pays for the improvements. Is there a way that we can change that going forward where a prorated amount of what we anticipate might be the mitigation? I mean, obviously DuPont Silicon Road, because we don't own it, we have real difficulty with, but is there, for the other parts of it, you're right, as we get smaller and smaller developers, they're gonna, the last one in, if they're putting in a really tiny facility and they get hit with the $17 million interchange they have to fix, it's not fair. Is there a way we can prorate and collect the money and put it in a dedicated fund so that when that trigger
There's benefits and non-benefits for everyone that you choose. And you can do traffic impact fees, and with traffic impact fees, you do it based on a number of trips that are generated. The challenge with that is you collect the fees, but you need to spend them within 6 years of completing them.
You have to spend it within 6 years.
And if you don't, then you return them. So you would, and also immediate, I want to say, I don't know how long ago it was, at one point, the city was considering that, and you'd have to do like a model and say where trips would be going, and then the cost of improvements, and then you do a little math, kind of like the water and the water and storm fees that we have. So we do a little calculation, and so we talked about it with the council meeting before, but you can always investigate that. I still think it would be a benefit to be talking with Pierce County and JBLM, because, eventually
Eventually it's going to break.
well, eventually something's going to have to be done, and we really don't know. You can make projections. January it's not a precise science, so we'll see what comes out in the date. And maybe no one's going to be able to get through up to I-5. It's going to be horrendous, and maybe some improvements are going to have to be done along myself. And I think it'd be advisable that DuPont and JBL and Pierce County start talking about, we have this major corridor, and it's not within the city's jurisdiction, and it affects more than just the city of DuPont, and start into dialogue.
Well, it affects Silicon too.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it affects Port Louis too. Yeah, and so I think it's key to start talking about that, because if you're talking about mitigating that, DuPont Silicon Road, it's just not DuPont that should be mitigating it. It should be. I think we'd be able to have a joint agreement saying, okay, we're going to be doing this on this road in the future, and we've got to figure out how we're going to fund it. So I think that's another path to go down. And I don't even want to, so you talk about the questions funding. Yeah, so that's.
Well, once upon a time when the economy was booming, we might have been able to get an impact area
Right.
fully developed in 6 years, but probably not.
Yeah, and it's one of the things, to look at is, look at all the pipeline trips you have. You have like, down here at, I'm going to do my little pointer here. You have like 27,000 pipeline. Those are trips you've already approved. You just haven't built. You don't see them on your street yet. And they've already, may or may not mitigated, because in the park area, I'm going to call it the park area, this area, it's going to be generating a lot of traffic. And they have improvements that they're required to do, they just haven't done yet because no one's built, but they're in their permit conditions. They're going to be doing improvements at Bob's Hollow Lane, they're gonna have to do, there's some conditions that they have to do stuff on DuPont Stone Road. So, I just wanted to look, there's some opportunity, and you say, I don't want to say they're missed, because that was a big development, and so their mitigation's lined out, but you're gonna start having more and more, pocket developments, and so is it gonna really work out for you? I don't have it, we have to work the numbers.
I look at that, and as somebody who lives on this side, I go, hey, I want truck traffic to be evenly flowing through there, but I look at those bottom line numbers of 40,000, 548,000. There's already a lot of stress on that arterial. There's going to be more stress. There's going to be a huge amount of stress. So I don't, that you can only spread that peanut butter so far. We're going to have to pursue something to mitigate DuPont Stillcombe Road. It's just going to have to be expanded. Now, I used to be the chief of staff for First Corps, so I understand the Rubik's Cube logic they're using over there. And what is going to happen at Integrity Gate, they have no idea. Because it's going to be soldier habits and what works better for them. The numbers of people on JBLM is changing, where units are actually assigned. So what the individual soldier and civilian employee decides to do isn't the subject of any study. So, and it's going to take a while. People will play around with things, and is that better for me or worse for me? And so we're not going to really know. It'll be a year after that gate opens before you really get a sense of what the pattern is. And so I take with a certain grain of salt what their projections are, because I know how they did it.
Well, and that was actually my concern on some of their numbers when they came back, because initially they were saying, oh, maybe only a few percentage would divert from Main Gate, and then now I'm seeing 900 trips in just the peak hour, and it was like, wait a minute. And so I really kind of wonder if those were correct.
Yeah, I think we'll see increased traffic on Center Drive from the Hoffman Hill population that will choose to get on post that way instead of come out to I-5, depending on where they work on post.
Right.
Because if you work on Main Post, coming in the Integrity Gate, you got to get across North Fort and over. So, but if I'm a soldier and I live up in Hoffman Hill, well, right now I come down out 118 and drive up to the Main Gate and cut on either way, North Fort or Main Post. Integrity Gate, I can come down Center Drive. So all of a sudden we may see an increase there going in that direction. Again, it's going to take a while. It's not a science.
It does, and even just in our yearly counts too. You just, numbers are shift all the time, and
During the numbers that you try to figure out what happened.
was somebody else deployed, or was,
Yeah, it affects. I don't know if it's in your bailiwick, but Ted, I brought this up to you before, and I would ask that Jay look at this for us. One of the things this body did, very popular decision in the city of DuPont, was we imposed a $20 tab fee. We have a lot of commercial traffic here now, lots of it, and we're going to have more of it. And I just, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. I don't think they register their vehicles here. I don't think they're paying our tab fees. I could be wrong, but that's one of the ways this body contributes to the surface infrastructure of the city of DuPont. And right now, the only people paying that are the residents, whereas the big heavy users that are impacting us are now going to be more and more the commercial traffic. And I don't know what jurisdiction or authority we would have to say, you work here, you register your vehicle here.
But the answer to that, Councilman, is
it's almost like tax. Where's the company headquarters is where they register, where they pay. And this is why when you go down the road on the highway, you see tons of Maine trailers. That's not by accident. Maine's not charging anything. Now, I can continue to explore other ways, but paying the tab fee, unless the company is based here, is not an option.
I want to think too that doesn't the city of Seattle have something like an employee
Yes.
fee, or am I
There's head tax. There's different ways around
Right.
a business or an enterprise of that size making impact on the city. So we can talk about all.
Yeah, and I'm also the business friendly guy, so, our economic future relies on businesses. So now you cross a fine line where, do you chase them away? Do you want them here?
And everyone's, still, Quinn did it based on sales tax because they had Costco and they had Home Depot all located in the city. And most of the people who were coming into the city weren't living in the city. And so their citizens voted to go, or their council did to go with sales tax. And that's how they did their transportation. Because they looked at what the economics were in their town. So every town's a little bit different.
Unfortunately, we're not getting sales from the trucks, they're all warehousing and we're not getting,
You don't have.
we're not having revenue, the trucks aren't generating revenue right here in the city.
Don't trucks pay, I know they pay fuel excise tax, and isn't that distributed? I know that the company I work for, they drive in Oregon, so they're paying that in Oregon, and they're also paying it in Washington. So, I don't know, our finance director is not here, so I have no idea if that is divvied up and how deep it goes. If it goes, stays at the state level, or if it goes county, state, city.
I actually have personal information on that because I know an independent operator and I don't remember his book. So the heavy trucks, they pay a federal highway excise tax of $5.50 per vehicle every year. They have, if they drive interstate, they have a prorated vehicle tab. So it's, they might pay $500 for Washington, $200 for California, and it's prorated based on their mileage. Then they also have their fuel tax prorated between all the states under what's called IFTA. How that, and that goes to each state, based on how many miles you drive in each state and your fuel mileage. How that then gets distributed from the state level back down to the local agencies, I don't know.
Could you find out from Sandy?
Well, I don't know.
What? You already know?
Yeah, we don't get excise tax. Not at the local level. I do not know where it stops, but it does not get to the county or local level.
Yeah, we do get some of the fuel tax.
We do get, there's municipalities get that portion of sales tax, and there's another slice of the gas tax that the state redistributes, but it's not the excise portion.
Okay, but, so there is some money that is gonna make it here.
But probably not. Probably pretty
But
much.
the excise tax is pretty significant, and that's what we get to.
Another question, could you, you have your figures here. If my memory serves me correctly, Center Drive will have to be widened. And which section is that, from Neal to the freeway, or?
Well, yeah.
Probably more Bob's Hollow,
Yeah.
Bob's Hollow Lane.
It was addressed in their last comp plan, but once again, it's based on the land development that was in the comp plan. And as it's been mentioned before, traffic projections is not an exact science. The development turns out to be warehousing versus research. They generate different trips, and so it basically is what actually is developed that's what's going to determine if you have to build those lanes. But right now, in the comp plan, it says, yes, you'll have to build those lanes. And so, just, like I say, it depends on when this area, it also, it depends on when it's reclaimed, because that includes that area too. So, it may be down the pipeline ways.
Right ways.
Yeah, because right now, you're not even at your 26 yet, so 27,000.
And again, on all of these projections, we try to be pretty conservative too. So, going back to the Amazon site, for example, was originally proposed was much bigger than what, their actual experience is. And it's really great when you get somebody like Amazon that has a history of what their other facilities are doing, because you can get real data rather than our trip generation values, which are theoretical and they're just average from studies that have been done for various uses. So anymore with places like Amazon where they're just so busy selling everything, and who knows if their drone technology is so good. Yeah, we'll be dealing with the airspace issue. Yeah, maybe that will be it. Everything will be elevated.
DuPont tunnel. I know somebody's selling the DuPont machines.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there comes a time, if I remember correctly, and when we were talking about the area around the golf course, when there was, the preliminary talk and whatnot. If I remember correctly, that was the development that was going to push the level of service. So it would force us to make a decision to put traffic on Center Drive, where, it just, going out the way, just.
With truck traffic.
Right.
It was certainly raised, I believe, at that time. And, again, going back to, most of the industrial is now kind of concentrated along DuPont Silicon Road. Honestly, in my opinion, and strictly my opinion, if you remove the restriction on Center Drive right now, probably most of those trucks would still keep using DuPont Silicon Road. And again, mostly because they're operating throughout the day and it's not a big deal. And if they're heading north on I-5, they're probably not going to go down Center Drive and then come back around. It's the shorter route. Because the golf course development, they're kind of at that break point. It's a lot easier to go south on Center Drive to I-5 rather than, going around. Yeah, so it is. Just from when you look at the map, just logically, you're kind of going, which way do I want to go? You want to go on Center Drive to I-5. It's just kind of the logical route you want to take. So.
An access point we haven't talked about is 116 Mount Road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another one of those owned by many people, claimed by none. I don't think there is a U.S. government agency that doesn't have some claim to that piece. I think it's, DuPont, the county, the state, JVLM, and the Nisqually tribe all have some slice of that. But again, looking at mitigation strategy, look at how we have squeezed a lot of our population into a sack called Hoffman Hill that's got a fairly narrow ingress, into Center Drive. You got just, a few points coming up there. If we were able to open Mounds Road up for ingress, egress, north and south, all of a sudden it doesn't do anything about the truck traffic, but it takes some of the population. If Councilman Gorski's going down to Lacey, it might be a lot easier for him to go out 116 at Mounds Road than to come down Center Drive to 118. And I don't know what thought is into crossing all the leaps and hoops to get Mounds Road opened up.
Would you like some history on that?
I live for it.
History according to Tampa. So, this was in the 90s. Gosh. So, when this was, I remember sitting at the table with Fort Lewis, Rico, and we were talking, this is when they were before, this area was just what do you call it, twinkle of someone's eye. And we were talking about making a connection to the golf course. And there was actually talking about a land trade that Rico would make with Fort Lewis, and we would be a whole. But the wrong thing is the golf is Fort Lewis and deal. And so it's basically their golf course and their land. And the end result was they would not, at that time, would not allow it to happen. And so actually that affected your comprehensive plan. unintended, I.
Well, yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just saying-
absolutely. You're coming up out of the Nisqually Flats and you can peel off on Mounds Road and all of a sudden you're getting to Lakewood via
Yeah.
Hawthorne.
Well, I'd actually like to speak about this because I live in Hawthorne.
And if you live in that area, yeah.
And it can take, and for people who don't live in Hawthorne Hill, and many people say who don't, it can take you upwards of 15 minutes to get out of Hawthorne Hill when the school buses are running. 15 minutes. So people who live in Palisade and elsewhere, you gotta think about that. Because to get from, let's say, Scherzer or some of these other streets that lead out of there, you are in a conga line behind a school bus. So when I look at some of these things, and and we talk about impact and bringing truck traffic in peak, some of the peak hours that we're discussing for Amazon kind of coincide with school bus traffic as well. And then, you'll have the unpopularity with the parents that, you're gonna, if we allow truck traffic now to exit south to I-5, that'll be a very contentious issue in town. So, I'm one of the 16,910 people who have to make that trip every day. But if you open up the back gate, there's unintended consequences, not only for traffic, because when we had that major accident a few months ago, probably in the wintertime, what happened is everyone tried to get around it, and they hit a dead end, basically, if they had to come through town. It would open up, you can basically take, from SeaTac Airport on down, that is your stopping point of not taking I-5 to get to Olympia. That is the dead end. There is no other dead end. And if you open that up, now you give people a way to get to Olympia from Seattle that they don't have to take I-5. So that creates a complexity for the traffic that when they want to get around something, they will. The other thing is policing. One of the consequences of having it kind of cordoned off is that it's not as attractive for the criminal element to go into an area when there's only one way in and out of town. And so we've already kind of, mucked around with the Highland, and you can't turn left on that, and all that other business. But so to open up that back gate, it would seem like a great fix, but I think it would open up a whole can of whatever on what we would not see around the corner on. And I'm here to say that I would probably be against it, although it would relieve me to go to Lacey. I think I'm probably closer to the Thurston County line than I am to Kathy's house. but that said, I don't know if that is really the route we need to go, because when we bought into Hawthorne Hill, we're counting on Loop Road being open by now. So that was something that was kind of sold. But what I'm hearing is there needs to be a real big rethink on the development. And, I don't know if you meant it in jest, but I would even consider a moratorium on building just so we can get a handle on the comp plan, because what we've decided we've become is a logistics center. We had some grandiose dreams 15 years ago that we'd have a tech park and some of the lower flat buildings that have people come into office type work, lab work. That's all done now. What we've discovered based on proximity and what happened with 9/11 and other things is that, we're a good location for transit and for truck, a depot basically. So I think that, we need to reconsider what our development looks like. And I'm not too worried about the numbers so much, thinking that rethink has to take place right away. And the time is now, because we do have an initiative to kind of put forward our comp plan. But what we're really looking at here is increasing a lot of truck traffic going to and from I-5 on Center Drive. And I know that the county's come in and kind of suggested that on occasion, that they basically told us it's a linchpin to development. But the question we have to ask ourselves as a governing body is the quality of life versus the sellout. What are we really getting in exchange for it? We don't have a Costco, we don't have a Cabela's, we don't have a way to bring in that type of tax money. So all we're counting on is basically a property tax and maybe a B&O tax that's attached and monkeyed around with. I'm not sure that even developing a lot of this land makes a lot of sense without a vision. And opening it up, I don't think it's a non-starter at this point. I don't think you'd have public support, especially for what you're not seeing on the map, this is a very old map you brought, you're talking about 2/3 of the population of DuPont that has to take the meal. 2/3. 2/3 of the voters, 2/3 of the tax base. And they're not going to like it. If they're going to have to start competing with the trucks, and they're already at 16.9, and they're saying, oh, well, the next one, the pipeline is 27, it impacts them the most. So I would be very cautious on those discussions going forward and what we're approving as a community for business to come in here. Because if we've decided, and I think just by accident, we've decided that with FedEx and Amazon and Northwest coming in, we are basically just inviting in heavy traffic to our roads. So I would be cautious about any of that going forward, and especially what will impact Hoffman Hill, because Hoffman Hill is the linchpin in this, that part of Center Drive.
Okay. Anything else to present us?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is a deliberative body, and
Yeah,
these
so
are
I'll
serious
just give you,
discussions.
from a historical standpoint, from a current conditions, I think we've summarized where we're at. But, when Jerry and I talked about this, some of the things that we listened for, like, moving forward, some thoughts we had was, you're working on a comp plan, that's a good thing. You may decide to change some of your land uses, and it'll be interesting to see what falls out of that. We do think you should continue doing your annual counts that we do every September, October. We think that we should also add to those counts, we'll add truck count. They can do business tubes, and we can start getting a handle on the trucks, the types of trucks. Who knows, maybe people are using Center Drive for truck traffic. I don't know. So, yeah, so we'll get used to, we definitely, that isn't a big expense. We do the biggest expenses have the counts taken. So we'll definitely add that part onto it if the city desires. Repeating, I really think there needs to start being some communication with Pierce County, with Stillicum, JBLM. Not that you're going to come with a solution, but you're going to start working on a framework of saying, we have this road that's critical to our area. So that needs to be looked at. We also need to talk about what we're going to do with these little pocket developments. Because we have one on our desk right now, and Jerry and I are, we're going to be talking to Peter and Bill, saying, what are we going to do? You're going to tell this guy he can't build unless he does a major improvement. Is he not going to build? Is that a risk you guys want to take? So you'll probably be seeing us sometime soon on that development. So we need to be thinking about pocket developments. Doing the moratorium is very, there's unintended consequences of that too. So I'm not going to go down that road. I'll let council handle that one. And then, talking about as you do your comprehensive plan, I don't, that's the time you're going to do your capital facilities plan, start finding out how you're going to finance these improvements. Whether you do traffic impact fees, whether you change, or implement how you do your traffic benefit district. And then if, I don't know if you guys, if the council is concerned about Haskell Street at all. And to me, if you are, the first step is you need to have your attorney look at the covenant and see the legalities of that covenant. Because 100% vote.
It'll never be.
Yeah, I don't know how the legalities.
There's more same unintended
Oh, absolutely.
consequences of everybody taking Barksdale instead of,
That was back in 1998. It's very, for some of you here, you may not realize there was a lot of us them.
right.
It was
That's clear and big trash.
Yeah, it is a lot of us them, and the meetings were very vocal, and,
So a lot of the answer then was dissipated, so.
yeah. But still 100% in historic village and divisions 1 through 4 of Palisades, that's
A lot of campaigning.
really that galleys. And I did bring a copy, and Aaron, I really appreciate Aaron finding it. I thought it was an ordinance. We looked, couldn't find it. She found it. So it's restrictive, it's a covenant, restrictive covenant on the land itself. An ordinance would have been a lot easier. So, yeah. So those are just our thoughts about moving forward. So no magic bullet for you.
Pasco wouldn't help much of anything that are real issues, because you're not going to put trucks down there, and it's not going to relieve Hoffman Hill.
The traffic in the historic village can come out to explain.
Yeah, it would give the historic village another exit out.
Not even I want to go up against Market Farm for one way out. That's useful. I mean, it wouldn't make it shorter for me, but.
Well, yeah, long-term, we have some challenges.
What about one way for Hoffman Hill? There's something-
And I think we see the purpose of a transportation benefit district now is that we will be adjunct to our other role in the council. This is part of what we have to think about. Appreciate your time, expertise, your experience and historical knowledge. I didn't think this would be easy. And I think we're facing the curse of being popular. And the multiple jurisdictions that we have overlaying some of our key areas is just going to make it more challenging.
One of the things Tamara and I talk about all the time is we have a great city. I mean, a lot of places are so envious of your infrastructure, your sidewalks and.
We do, but part of it is we want to keep it that way. How do we manage things well so that the city reaps the benefit of thoughtful development, but we don't make this a place none of us want to be?
And the other thing, and you all know it, you're never going to have that 100% agreement. And so there are some very tough decisions, and you might, be kicking off your neighbor, but, again, what's best for the community. And it's a tough job because anymore it's just, everything's so contentious, and you can't get agreement. So it's, we try to present the facts and give you our professional recommendation, but ultimately you're the decision makers.
We appreciate
We're
it.
going to throw it back on you.
Anybody from the board, any other questions or comments?
Can you email us some of those figures that you were throwing out as far as Amazon and the number of trucks and sort of what's on this map, the finer points of those figures that you were throwing out?
Oh, sure. We covered it in a little bit more. I know it's a little cryptic.
Aaron has this map.
That get published every year.
Right.
Yeah, I was just curious about what she was throwing out there about Amazon.
The Amazon
Yeah.
statistics. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to make this a little bit more coherent. So I'll go ahead and probably send that to.
Send it to Aaron.
To Aaron, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ted, you got anything you want to throw in on this August body, or you're not going to jump on that hand grenade? Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. I adjourn this meeting of the Transportation Benefit District.